Welcome to the New Ulm Forum. My name is Ruth Ann Webster. I'm the president of the New Ulm League of Women Voters. We are a nonprofit, nonpartisan political organization, and we're interested in a lot of things, a lot of civic things. We're interested in a lot of things that our government does for us. And today, I've asked our Brown County Veteran Service officers to come, and we're going to talk about what they do and all the how smart they are and who they help, and yeah, there we go, who they help and how to get in touch. We've got an interesting half hour. So I'm going to ask. I have three guests. We'll start with Greg. Introduce yourself personally, just what you do, what you do when you're not working as a, and then what your role is at the office.
Well, I'm Greg Peterson. I'm a New Ulm native, 1980 high school graduate. I enlisted in the Air Force, and I served for 23 and a half years flying aboard giant cargo jets as an aircraft loadmaster. I grew up on a farm in rural Nicollet County, and after leaving the Air Force, I returned to Minnesota and was looking for employment, and I did work at the Minnesota State Hospital for a while. But then I got a call from Susan Allen from the Workforce Center, and she thought this job would be good for me.
And what is that? What are you doing?
Well, at that time, that was in 2004, which I started in April of 2004, so I'm almost at 20 years, and it was the County Veteran Service Officer. Was one veteran and then one non-veteran, our secretary that was in the building.
So you've been there for 20 years. All right, next.
And I'm John Schatzko,
Right.
and I grew up in Sleepy Eye and went off and did Army jobs for 23 years after graduating. And we're out in Virginia and trying to decide what we're going to do next. Are we staying on the East Coast or moving back to Minnesota, where both of our families are from? And, well, family won, and we're back here. And several years of part-time jobs, and wife was working full-time, and I was kind of doing all the other jobs with the kids and transporting them around town, and job opened up at the county, and really enjoy doing that and working with veterans every day.
Okay, good, thank you. Mike.
And I am Mike Montalto. I'm originally from Chicago. Joined the Marine Corps in 2011. When I was discharged in 2015, I came to Minnesota. This is where my wife is from. We have two children. Fresh out of the Marine Corps, I started in a statewide nonprofit called MACV. It's the Minnesota Assistance Council for Veterans. They help homeless veterans and unemployed veterans. Did that for 6 years and found out that Brown County was hiring for a county veteran service officer. So I put my name in the ringer. Started working for Brown County October of 2022. So I am just shy of a year and a half there. Outside of work, I'm a dad to two kids. I got a daughter and a son, so they keep me very busy with sports.
Oh, I'm sure. Now, for anybody out there listening who does not know where the Vet Services Office is, would you tell us where you are? How could you not know this? But somebody might be new.
That's right. I would imagine a lot of people think they need to go to there. I grew up in Winona, and I need to go there to see my County Veteran Service Officer. But no, you can come see us. We're in the courthouse on the State Street entrance, first office on the left, right next to the elevators.
And you are a part of a much larger organization. Or before we got started, Greg and I were talking about how the services, the idea that veterans need services got started. Do you want to tell us about that?
Well, yeah, I'll just give you the quick synopsis. During World War II, in 1944, President Roosevelt signed the GI Bill of Rights, and that gave those service members that would be being discharged, it gave them health care, it gave them life insurance, it gave them education, it gave them home loans. because there were millions in service in World War II, and they were all going to come back when the war ended, which it did a year later, and they would need some way to navigate the red tape of those services. The state of Minnesota recognized that need, and in 1945, in April of 1945, they signed a bill that created the County Veteran Service Officer Program, and it said that each county shall, and that's kind of mandatory, you shall hire a veteran for the sole purpose of aiding the veterans of your county.
So, is it a requirement of your job to be a veteran?
Yes.
Yes,
it
yes,
is.
well, I kind of gathered that.
There are a lot of times people who ask me if I'm a veteran. Are you a veteran? Or sometimes they think I'm still in the service. They think I'm stationed here at the courthouse. But yeah, and the reason we put on a second and a third county veteran service officer is that although the population of veterans with the World War II and the Korea ones expiring, we see more workload that the VA requires of the claimant, we'll call them, or our customer. And we aid with that workload. And then just most recently, in the last year and a half, about since Mike started, the PACT Act, it's called. And that's an enhancement of toxins, locations where the chemical Agent Orange was used, the wars in Iraq and Afghanistan and all throughout the Mideast where everybody was exposed to burn pits. Many diseases are developing out of those, and our need for another person just exploded about that time, and it was really great that Mike was able to come on then.
How do you work with explain to people who don't know what the VA is, where they operate out of, how that whole system works, you know? Hi.
Gents?
Yeah.
Well, in Minnesota, we have 2 hospitals, one in St. Cloud, one in Minneapolis, and several community-based clinics that veterans can go to get their medical care. And that's primarily what we're helping with when we're talking about health care for veterans. Since we live so far away from specialty care clinics in the Twin Cities and St. Cloud, veterans can also, if they're eligible, get care through the community, and they can, through their VA provider, get a referral and get sent out to the community and be seen locally. So that helps for those of us who are so far away from a hospital. And that's helpful to make it a little easier to get care.
And you're helping with the paperwork, right?
Yes, and quite often we're helping make the appointments, and really even further up front, get them enrolled in VA healthcare, and that's really a big step for a lot of veterans. Greg was talking about the PACT Act, and one of the things that came along with the PACT Act was opening up the doors a little bit wider to different categories of veterans and when they served, where they served, and creating bigger groups of eligible veterans, make it easier for them to get enrolled.
So, is it, if a person's you have to be a veteran to get
Well,
services?
yeah, and so what is a veteran?
Yeah, what is a veteran? There you go.
Mike can tell us.
Oh, tell us what is a veteran?
So in the state of Minnesota, there are a couple different criteria to meet the definition of a veteran. The state definition of a veteran is anybody who served in an armed force for a consecutive 181 days. If you didn't meet that criteria, there are other exceptions to that, where while in service, while you were on active duty or in boot camp, you sustained an injury or a diagnosis of a chronic illness. Those veterans can come through our office and file a disability claim for that. And once the VA recognizes that that injury was sustained from their service, they're considered disabled veterans. So that's another pathway for that. What's another pathway for that? or a National Guardsman who has completed Title 10 orders, which means they were activated federally for service. There is another activation for National Guardsmen called Title 32 that are state orders, but those state orders do not make them a veteran by the definition.
Well, that's interesting. Now, I know from experience that in addition to helping veterans, you help relatives of the veterans.
Yeah,
Can you talk about that, how that works?
Yeah, I'm going to go back just a bit.
Oh,
So
okay, go,
well, that's
please
right.
do.
So we talked about VA healthcare,
Yes,
and Mike touched on VA disability benefits.
Yes.
And then the third arm of the VA is cemeteries. So what we do with VA cemeteries is mostly we're just ordering VA gravestone markers. We will help someone, they can do a pre-needs request for burial at Fort Snelling or Arlington National Cemetery. But those are the three prongs of the VA: healthcare, disability, and cemeteries. I thought I'd put this book
Yes,
up just
do
for a
that.
minute. This is called the Veterans Benefits Manual, and it gets published every year. And we have an equally large manual that is all federal laws and stuff. But this is the how-to. This is the how do you use that manual. And so when we're not actively engaged with a living veteran in our office, we may have a widow of a veteran. With the PACT Act, and really with Agent Orange going forward to the current date, veterans are passing away from diseases that those toxins created. So when there's a death related to this, we just say related to service, then that surviving spouse also gets a monthly stipend. Right now it's about $1,600 a month. There's some other things that come into play. There's a free health insurance, but we're generally working with them or ordering markers. I mean, even today we talked about ordering markers. I filed a claim for disability this afternoon. These guys we're just constantly working with the VA, but it's not just the VA, the federal government. Then the state of Minnesota has a Department of Veterans Affairs as well. Just like the state of Minnesota has a Department of Education that works with the U.S. Department of Education, our Minnesota Department of Veterans Affairs aids us as service officers. They provide us with training. And then they have service officers that are like us, except they work in St. Paul, and we will funnel our claims through them so that we call it a second set of eyes. Because sometimes we don't always get the proper form on it, or it may be outdated, and they'll be able to see that mistake before it gets submitted to the VA.
you touched on something I wanted to talk about was how did you guys train for this job? What skills did you have to develop in order to do this work?
Well, Mike's the newest one, so he's had the
Yeah,
most
there you go.
training just
Yeah.
recently.
Yeah, lots of training. Training put on by the State Department of Veterans Affairs, like Greg had just mentioned. Also by the National Association of County Veteran Service Officers. So that's the nationwide association of all CVSOs. There was also Service Department organization through the American Legion. They put on a course. And then continuing education every year. So to keep our accreditation, we have to do so much training every year, spring training and then fall training as well.
You work with do you work with the American Legion, VFW, those sorts of things, formally or informally, or?
Well, if we're talking about the clubs that are in town,
Yes, yeah.
that's informal.
Informal.
We'll do a lot of speaking at their events, encourage them to encourage their members to come see us. I wanted to touch on something. Mike used the term accreditation. So we are accredited by what's called the VA General Counsel. So it's the top of the VA, the attorneys, and they say after we've had all of our training, we have to have an FBI background investigation. You are now an accredited claims agent. And there are people that are not accredited claims agents that they do a lot of advertising on Facebook and in magazines, how they're gonna help someone get their benefits, but they charge people. Number one, it's against the law for them to even provide that service, and number two, they can't charge. There's a law in the books all the way back to 1865 that says an attorney can charge no more than $10 fee to assist a veteran. And that law still stands, and that's why we do these services for free. We're paid from the taxpayer dollars.
And I think you've had done some outreach to alert people that you don't have to pay to
Right.
get your services, right?
Right.
Right?
It's kind of common sense here in Minnesota. Veteran service officers have been around for almost 80 years. So we're generally a well-known county service, but there are other states that don't have county veteran service
Oh, my.
officers whatsoever. Many of them are down south. There's 29 in the nation that have county veteran service officers. The rest don't. So then that responsibility might fall heavier on an American Legion post or a VFW post where their service officers are asked, to be more knowledgeable.
Can you talk about how the number of people you're serving at any given time? Is there people lined up in your door, or do people call for appointments, or do they just show up, and what happens?
Yes, all of the above. It really varies throughout the day, throughout the week, and throughout the year. We kind of see cycles of, when we have a heavy turnout at our office. We encourage people to make appointments. It makes it easier for us to plan for the visit and do some prep work ahead of time. But we always welcome, phone calls or walk-ins.
Yeah.
Have you got any office staff besides the three of you?
Nope.
Oh, it's all,
Yeah, it's
oh my
just us.
goodness, I shouldn't say just you, but
Wow,
We do it all.
paperwork. In planning, I kind of asked you if it's okay, if you could talk about some of the success stories that you
Sure.
have, or, things you're like, oh, boy, I went home, I feel I really did a good job today,
Well, I'll ask Mike to talk about this, but because of his experience, his 6 years working with homelessness in Minnesota, went the very week that he started, we had a homeless crisis, and knowing that he had that experience, I just said, would you mind taking care of it? And it was a day on the job, and what'd you do?
Yeah, so, excuse me, we experienced a veteran in homelessness here in New Ulm, and he was literally living out of a tent behind his home. The home should have been condemned, although it was not. Big holes in the roof, and the foundation was cracked. Literally a hole in the hallway kind of situation. He needed help, and he waited too long, unfortunately. It was one of those situations where if he would have came to seek those services sooner, he probably could have been housed a little longer. It was October, there was snow on the ground already, it was very cold and damp outside. He was looking for help, and we went right to his home and kind of assessed the situation. He lived in a trailer. The trailer was being given back to the management of the trailer park as collateral for the back lot rent that he owed, and he had nowhere to go. So I contacted MAC via Mankato, which is the organization that I worked for prior, and they were able to get him set up with a hotel room for a couple days. Once the hotel room expired, we were able to transition him into the Mankato shelter, where he was then connected with homeless services, one specifically called HUD VASH. It's the HUD and the VASH program is essentially a subsidy for veterans for low-income housing, and he was able to get one of those vouchers and be able to move into a home, and now his situation is much better.
Oh, I'm
He's
sure.
no longer, sleeping
Yeah.
outside in a
Right.
tent that riddled with holes.
Right.
And yeah, it was a good situation. One of those, like you said, made me feel really good
Right.
about it. And also, like Greg had mentioned, that was kind of my lane of expertise, so I was more than happy to, jump into that situation and help them out.
Great, great. Any other
Yeah,
things that
well,
sort of
I
pop
did-
up, you know?
I did make a couple of notes before coming
Oh,
in, but
good, thanks.
a lot of what we do, a lot with the VA disability, we call it. And I remember all three of us, when we got out of the service, they said, "You want to file a disability claim?" Thought, "Pff, I'm not disabled," But disability comes in many factors, whether someone was injured in the service. I mean, we have people that were actually wounded in combat. There are injuries that occur on the basketball court. When you're in the military, you're in for 24 hours a day, 7 days a week, times however many years. So any injury that you incur can be claimed as a VA disability. So when the VA determines that someone is disabled, then they give them a rating based on a percentage between 0 and 100%, and then a disability compensation payment comes, kind of like Social Security disability. But the veteran can still work if they're on VA disability. And those compensation checks range from $150 to $4,000. So we oftentimes deal with quite a bit of money that gets paid retroactively. We may file a claim today, but it doesn't get done until December. That person's going to get 9 months of retroactive pay. I have one with a widow from Hanska. Her husband died of Agent Orange, but the VA would not recognize his service in Vietnam because he had been in the Navy. And we kept it, we call it keeping it alive, kept appealing, and then eventually, I think it was 16 years. Then it came that the VA said, yes, we'll now recognize sailors on boats. So she got a 16-year retroactive payment. It was $445,000 at no tax. And so those are what we call life-changing events.
Yeah, really.
And we see retroactive payments commonly. We see it very common, a few $1,000s. Sometimes we'll get hit $35,000, $40,000. A few weeks ago was on a Friday. We pulled several off the VA computer. I think we were near $100,000 for about 5 or 6 claimants. So those are ones that I go after, try and go after. But in this manual, a good friend of mine that's the veteran service officer in Benton County, he told me about a loophole that's in VA law and Social Security law. And I thought I was going to find a lot of widows and help them out, but it only turned out to be about a half dozen. But what happens if a veteran passes away and the spouse then starts drawing Social Security, but doesn't apply for VA benefits until 2 years down the road, maybe they didn't know they could, we can ask the VA to make a retroactive payment back to when they applied for Social Security. Right on the Social Security form, it says this is also a claim for VA benefits. And right on the VA form, it says this is a claim for Social Security benefits. And that's the only way I've seen it used, is to catch a retroactive payment here and there. But I looked up one, we had one that was $44,000. So.
Do you do financial planning?
No.
Everybody's on their own.
They are, yeah. That's a lot of money. Some people have taken cruises. Some people have put it towards their grandchildren's college funds.
Yeah, that's right.
Paid off their mortgages.
What am I missing? Is it because I wanted each one of you when we're done, I want each one of you to. I think that I might be wrong, but I think there's people who could use your services and wait too long or don't think they deserve it, or, oh, let's ask that, before I get into that question, what, in your experience, what barriers do people have to coming in, getting the help that they're entitled to? What?
I'll start with, the VA is really pushing online claims and being able to do it yourself and making it easier for folks to access those things and materials. So I've noticed a lot of the younger generation of veterans are trying to do claims on their own. And not saying that you can't do that, but these young veterans haven't gone through the training that we have gone through to be able to file a good, comprehensive, evidence-based claim. And a lot of the claims that veterans are doing on their own, specifically the younger veterans, are being denied. And you could always refile again, but it takes a little more work to do it the second time. So we like to do things right the first time. So I would like to encourage younger veterans to come seek our services. It's free. And yeah, so that's what I have noticed with the younger generation.
You want to add to
Well,
that?
I'd like to say that I think a lot of veterans don't think they have it so bad off, or it's, they're not, give it many times, give it to someone who's more worthy. A neighbor of mine, I was looking at his pill bottles one day, and I said, "You have high blood pressure?" "Oh, I've had it since I got out of Vietnam." It's a disability, it's on the Agent Orange list. And this particular person waited just a little too long. We encouraged. I got good health insurance. I don't need the VA. But when something happens, then you need the VA. And if you haven't been to us, haven't even enrolled in VA healthcare, then we're really scrambling around, because it's not you that's coming to see us, it's your spouse or your children, and they don't know where your DD-214 is. Another thing I wanted to say that we haven't mentioned is our local veterans relief. So we have an organization in the county called the Brown County Veterans Council. It started in 1986, made up of all of the veterans organizations, the American Legions. There's 5 of them in the county. At the time, there were 2 VFWs, Disabled American Veterans. We have an emergency relief fund. We are a 501c3 nonprofit, and we aid veterans in Brown County, generally with emergent needs. House payments, paying utility bills so they're not cut off. We've had people that live any place in the county and then their company closes down, come to us and come right away, because some of our things, our local resources we can capitalize on. There's a group in St. Peter who helps pay for emergency needs. The state of Minnesota pays for emergency needs. But the higher we get in the government, the more forms and paperwork it takes and the more time for people to review things.
Mm-hmm. So what would you say to somebody who hasn't yet come to visit you?
Well, yes, like Mike and Greg have both said, come on down or give us a call. We can review your records and see, right off the top, usually we can determine, what type of benefits you're initially available, that are available to you. And we usually dig into it a little bit further and figure out what else we can uncover. There are lots of benefits even at the local level, state level, and federal level. But sometimes we have to say no. There are, some categories of people who served in the military that aren't going to get as many benefits as others. So we can help sort through that and try and manage expectations, if nothing else.
And you know what you're doing.
Yes.
You know what you're doing.
Continuing
Yeah,
education
that's right, that's
keeps
right.
us going.
We have a class every Thursday afternoon.
Oh,
Every
really?
Thursday.
Oh, my
Yep.
goodness. Oh, my goodness. So don't come on Thursday.
Well,
Right.
call
Right.
ahead.
Call ahead, yeah.
Another group that we are not reaching is those who are in assisted living and nursing homes, whether it be a veteran or a surviving spouse. For wartime service, so World War II, Korea, Vietnam, the VA can help pay for that. It's not a lot of money. It's $1,300 for a surviving spouse, or about $2,200 for the veteran. But they're probably not even watching today, but maybe their children are, or nieces
yes,
and nephews.
Yes, right, right.
And even if it's, gosh, my uncle lives in Kansas City, how can he get help? We'll find him the person to get in touch with.
Right, right. Well, and again, Brown County Courthouse. What are your hours?
8 to
8
4:30,
to 4:30,
same as the courthouse.
Same as the courthouse, when the
Yep.
doors are open. Is there anything else very interesting. You are continuing to be of service to your country. Really appreciate it. Anything else? Anything we missed?
Plenty we missed. We'll have to get it on the
We'll-
next
We'll
time
have to get it
around.
on the next time.
We'll get chapter 2 next
All
time.
right,
Thank you,
thanks,
ma'am.
thanks, Mike. Chapter 2, that's right, good,
Thank
yes,
you.
yeah. Well, if something comes up too, give me a call, we'll put it on. Thank
How
you.
about we tell you what our phone number is?
Oh, there we go, and we'll put it on we'll have the, Ducat put it on.
507-233-6636.
Brown County Veteran
Veteran
Service
Service.
Office. Good, thank you for watching.